Let's bring into the conversation our friend there at Fox News Radio, reporter on Capitol Hill, Ryan Schmelz. He joins me. Ryan, good to see you. You have been guiding us through these confirmation hearings and votes, and you're going to continue to do just that. Let's talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. first. Some of these senators, Republican senators, were still on the fence up until this vote today out of committee. I'm talking about Senator Bill Cassidy, the Republican from Louisiana, ultimately siding with Kennedy, saying he is a yes on confirming Kennedy. He's a medical doctor. He had a lot of questions, a lot of concerns about some of the previous stances RFK Jr. has said and made when it comes to vaccines here. What got Cassidy over the finish line? Do you know?
Well, Cassidy described his conversations, Andrew, with Robert Kennedy Jr. as intense, and they kept these conversations going up until the last minute, it sounds like. And I think one of the big things that helped get Cassidy along the finish line was that Robert Kennedy Jr. and the Trump administration agreed to a number of concessions that you saw in Maddie's report right there. That includes having consultation when it comes to HHS hires. It also includes multiple conversations and multiple meetings on a monthly basis with the Senate Help Committee. And it also includes a number of other things. I think one that stands out was that Kennedy agreed that they will not take anything off the CDC website that says that vaccines do not cause autism. So a number of these concessions, plus the conversations that Cassidy had with Robert Kennedy Jr. were what got Cassidy over the finish line.
So, Ryan, what you're saying is politics behind the scenes. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Commitments were made, so to speak, to allay the concerns of, say, a Bill Cassidy.
As Todd Young, who we're probably going to talk about here in a little bit, said, the art of the deal. And it wasn't President Trump who was the deal maker here, though. The deal maker was Senator J.D. Vance, now Vice President J.D. Vance. But he tapped into his experience in the Senate. While it was short, he was able to utilize the relationships that he had with a number of these senators, whether it was Cassidy, whether it was Todd Young, and maybe some of these other senators who are on the fence, and be able to work out some type of deal with them to get them to a yes. And clearly that was effective here with Cassidy. And J.D. Vance also facilitated conversations between Todd Young and Tulsi Gabbard. Todd Young was probably the last Republican we were watching for on the Senate Intelligence Committee going into today. He ended up being a yes on Gabbard, and it looks like he's going to vote for her on the floor as well.
So that was my next question. Is a yes from these senators who are on the fence, is a yes on the committee vote the same as a yes on the Senate floor for a full confirmation vote? Are they one-to-one usually?
Well, there are situations where they will vote yes in committee, or they'll vote for the procedural votes that are involved with that. You saw Mitch McConnell do that with Pete Hegseth and then end up being a no on the final confirmation vote. But the statements we have gotten from Todd Young and Bill Cassidy today, as well as what they have said since then, makes it seem like they are for sure yeses on the final confirmation. They weren't just coming out with statements saying that they're going to support them in committee. The statements they came out with today are statements in support of the final nomination. So this is a very good sign for Tulsi Gabbard and a very good sign for Bill Cassidy.
So we're looking at the latest names that have been confirmed there. You see just today, just tonight, Pam Bondi going to the Department of Justice as Attorney General, Doug Collins as well at the VA, and Chris Wright there at the Department of Energy. Not entirely sure, how many cabinet confirmation flights you've covered, but are we on track with regard to presidential administrations here? Is this moving along rapidly, slowly, in the middle here, or no?
We've oftentimes heard Majority Leader Thune compare the timeline they're working with to President Trump's first term in 2016, as well as President Obama's term back in 2008. So Thune is definitely making it seem like they are on track, but there are delays that can't be ignored. Certainly, you've seen some pushback from Democrats who have made some procedural moves here that have made it difficult to get these nominees confirmed on time, whether it's trying to take advantage of the filibuster, trying to take advantage of the procedural hurdles like waiting 30 hours until they can have the vote. So certainly there has been some instances where there's been some stalling with these nominees, but Republicans have said they're going to weather the storm, and whether or not that means that they're going to just wait it out and sit through the weekend and wait for these nominees to go through, they've said they're willing to do that. And so you've seen some procedural hurdles and some delays here and there. And the other thing that was kind of a delay early on was that a number of these nominees had to push back getting their confirmation hearing started because they had issues with the getting the FBI background checks back, as well as getting some other financial disclosure forms through with the Department of Government Ethics. So there's been some other issues here outside of just Democrats wanting to stall this. There's been some paperwork issues that have pushed this back a little bit here and there too.
Yeah, I just want to put up the post from Senator Cassidy here just to give the context. I'm not going to read the whole thing. He said, I've had very intense conversations with Bobby and the White House over the weekend, and even this morning. He says, I want to thank Vice President J.D. Vance specifically for his honest counsel. And he says, with the serious commitments I've received from the administration, X, Y, and Z, et cetera, et cetera. So the commitments aspect there, I don't have the full tweet in front of me, but you can go to Bill Cassidy's account and you can read it there about his explanation for why he is a yes on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Who's next, Ryan? Who should we be looking out for on the Senate floor come tomorrow, the next day, for more confirmation votes?
Well, I think the one we're watching for now is going to be what happens with Kash Patel. We don't have an official timeline for when he's going to be voted out of committee that I've seen. And then eventually he will go to the Senate floor. But the feedback I'm hearing is that Republicans were very satisfied with his performance in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee last week. Take somebody like Tom Tillis, somebody who was on the fence with Pete Hegseth all the way up until the wee hours of that vote. He ended up being a yes on Hegseth, but there was a little bit of a roadblock getting there. Tillis came out of the committee hearing last week very excited about Kash Patel's nomination. So I think the way he handled himself in that hearing was good enough for Republicans, and he looks like somebody who's on track to be confirmed. It's probably going to be a party line vote, but that's all that Republicans need. They got 53, so they've got a lot of cushion to work with. There might be a detractor here or there, but we haven't seen anybody come out as a hard no on Kash Patel yet. And I think the big one later on that might face some pushback is going to be Lori Chavez DeRemer. She's not getting a lot of attention right now in the mainstream, but when they get her hearing scheduled, and the way this is kind of phasing out is that she's going to have her hearing scheduled when a lot of these nominees have already had their votes, so she's going to have a lot of the attention on her. She's somebody with a voting record in Congress that was very pro-union. That's been a concern for a number of Republicans who represent right-to-work states. So she may lose a number of Republicans because of that, but she might get some Democrats because of that. So I think we're in for a very interesting back and forth between both parties when we get to Lori Chavez DeRemer's nomination.
Yeah, she's up for labor secretary, of course, herself, a former congressman, Republican congressman from Oregon. I think this is a politically interesting question. I just thought of it. I'm going to ask you. Maybe viewers are interested in this aspect of the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. upcoming confirmation vote. Will any Democrats vote for him?
We thought that was a possibility going into this, and we felt the same way about Tulsi Gabbard. But the way that their hearing shook out and the way that Democrats have responded and made public statements so far, highly unlikely. It was interesting. John Fetterman was actually asked about this off the Senate floor earlier today. And so it said, well, how are you going to vote? And he says, why does it matter? They've got the job. So what does it matter how I vote on this now? But I think he's still somebody we could watch for to be a possible yes maybe on these nominees. But he said some negative things about RFK here and there that I've seen. So we'll see. But I just think the possibility of Democrats getting on board with them right now is very low. And one thing that's interesting too that I looked up today, I went to the Heritage Foundation scorecards for Tulsi Gabbard's time in Congress. Her lifetime score at the Heritage Foundation is like a 10%. Bob Good, who Donald Trump primaried and wanted out of Congress, had like a 99%.
Yeah.
So That's an interesting dynamic there, just to say the least.
Yeah, it just shows you how some of these political alliances and allegiances have been scrambled in the Trump era. Ryan Schmelz, as always, thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Andrew. Have a great night.